So welcome to another video from theplayersaid.com. My name's Alexander.
And I'm Grant.
I almost forgot my own name. It's been a very long day. We're here at San Diego Historicon, and we've just been sat down with Maurice Suckling. He's a wonderful designer. We've played a number of his games over the years. And he's just been showing us a prototype for his upcoming game.
Well, and more than showed us, we played an entire game.
Played a full demo of it.
Really enjoyed it, had a good time with it. Would love to play it again because now I think we understand what we're doing, but a very, very interesting negotiation style game.
So yeah, the game's called Peace 1905, and so not your usual fare of what it is that we play, and this is a game that simulates the peace negotiations after the russo-japanese war. So I'm going to kind of throw it over to you. Just give us a quick introduction about the game and what players can expect.
Sure, yeah. So this is a game that came out of Fred Saval's Consim Game Jam 2, the second one we had.
When was that?
So that was August 2022.
Okay.
We had 72 hours to make a game with a specified brief. So that brief was, I think it was 52 cards and no board other than a board that you might construct out of those cards. And I was in a group with three other guys, SP Shaman and Bill Sullivan and Nathaniel Barkley. And none of us knew each other. We just kind of randomly were put in this group together. And we made this game. And it went down well. We won that competition, and then we stayed developing it because we thought it was interesting. And then we signed to Kevin Bertram's Fort Circle, and hoping that this game will be ready to be in people's lives maybe sometime next year. We're still in the development process, so we'll see how that goes.
So the one question I have is, where in the world did you come up with the idea of Russo-Japanese War peace negotiations?
Well, so
that just doesn't seem like a hot topic, right?
Well, so with 72 hours, you don't have a lot of time to do research.
You probably had like 10 minutes to do research, frankly.
Well, so the time restriction compelled us to choose a topic that had a limited amount of research that you could do, right? So this is a topic that had been in my mind before this game jam happened, but I'd never done anything about it, and suggested it to the other guys. We all liked the sound of it because it was a small enough topic that within an hour or two, everyone could be kind of roughly up to speed with the core bits of this story. There's a lot more to it that has taken longer to do more research, but nevertheless, it was achievable in that time. It meant that we maximized the amount of time we were spending in development as opposed to burning up half of that time on actually trying to do the basic level of research.
So I now connect the dots as to why potentially you were banished from any future Consim game jams. You had this game designed, fleshed out, and completed before the jam.
Did the other three guys in your group just see that they got put with you and were like,
I don't know if they knew who I was. I don't.
A professional war game designer.
So, but you know, in some ways, so there's another game that I have in development called Crisis 1914, which I know you guys know about, and this was a game that had been in my mind for about 40 years on and off, and shares a little bit of DNA with this game, where there are they're both what I would really call non-zero-sum game designs, where you can win too hard, and if you win too hard, you lose. So you're trying to figure out how do I play in the right way so that I'm not generating. Both games have this concept of tension that is a mechanism whereby you will lose even in the process of you trying to win. So in some ways, this game, some of these game concepts came from other bits of thinking that I was doing on other games. So some of that thinking was in my mind, but I'd never done anything on this particular treaty. I just kind of had it in my mind, and it was one of the suggestions that we came up with as a group, and we decided that it seemed an interesting kind of thing to tackle. And you know, Churchill had come out earlier a few years earlier, and so this notion of negotiation games wasn't entirely new. It was kind of in some degree of kind of consciousness of players and designers, and it felt like something that we could evolve further and kind of push in a new direction, maybe.
So the game is designed currently in this edition, right? Is a 2-player game.
Yes, we played.
I heard you
yeah.
talking though earlier that you have a potential idea for a 3rd player.
Yeah, so there is already a 1-player mode for this game, and one of the things that we're talking about now, and the thing we're about to do now, which is really kind of slowed up development, because we would be much closer to kind of through that development cycle, is we want to try a 3-player mode. So right now, 2-player is one of you represents the Russian delegates and the other represents the Japanese delegates. This is so Teddy Roosevelt secured the Nobel Peace Prize for his involvement in this particular treaty, and in the 2-player game, he's represented by some of these decks of cards that are triggered on certain conditions. In the 3-player game, Roosevelt would be an active participant, trying to. His job would, in that case, would be to make sure that no one wins by very much, in which case he wins. So
Sure.
he has sort of vested interest in not empowering any one state too much. Really.
Okay. So the game, you're fighting over issues. There's 12 different issues.
Yeah.
Those issues, while they have titles, they're really generic in the respect that they just have victory points for either side.
Yeah, in some ways. I mean, they do correspond to the 12 issues that were in the treaty.
Important. Yep.
And there's some asymmetry in terms of how many victory points they're worth, but also they correspond to the national priorities. Each of you have these hidden national priorities, and you need to get enough of those in order for your government to ratify the treaty.
So you've been giving your marching orders, and you have to at least get 2 of those 3 priorities accomplished in one, or you lose.
And they correspond to specific issues that have there's some sort of historical veracity as to why those national priorities would correspond to those particular issues.
Yeah.
And those were drawn from a pool of these little chits, so you never have the same priorities in any given game, which I thought was very interesting, because there was unique ones for each player, but there's also a shared pool. So there's a potential that, like, if you don't win kind of both of your ones, you might also have lost the other one because the other person's fighting so hard for it.
Yeah, so that's where table talk is actually encouraged. And normally what happens when people play the first time is they don't do much of it because they're just kind of learning how the game works. But what I tend to see when people play it more is that starts happening more, and people start being more open or bluffing more about what national priorities they need in order to win, or
I
to
need
not
this
to lose.
one, or I'm going to lose because right.
And if
But
you
really,
lose,
you didn't have it the whole time.
Right.
Exactly.
And in this game, if you don't win enough of those, then everyone loses. So you need to make sure the other guy is getting his national priorities as well. So you have a reason to be lying about the ones that you need.
Sure.
Yeah.
Well, and I thought the best part of the game were the symmetric decks, right? Each player has what are their
The position
13
decks.
position
13
cards,
position cards, and they're valued basically 0 through 4.
Yeah.
They have events kind of tied, and those are what you're playing down, representing your negotiating.
Yeah, how hard you want to fight for that issue. But as you know, so some of those depends on quite when they're played. Different players have access to different kinds of levels of information at different times. So you don't know exactly what you're going up against, and that mismatch can be sort of catastrophic in terms of how much tension is manifest as a result.
Yeah, and we saw some of that where it was like, oh, if you play this open or then you reveal this, you can then like totally trump someone. Or if they played a very big one, you can go at a 0
And
then
hurt
all
them
of a sudden,
badly.
That was a fascinating part of it, and I loved that deck. Each card most of the cards are one-time use in the whole game, and so it's like those decisions are agonizing. You're fighting over 3 issues across 4 rounds, basically, and it's like, I'm going to use this one card, and I'm never going to see it again. And if you mess it up, and that was already good, and it gets wasted, and the cool little extra stuff doesn't trigger, you're like, oh, it's very painful.
And I really liked the events that were on those cards because some of them were very important, like reducing tension or giving you a VP. Now, those kind of things, it's on a first play.
Yes.
I think we're like, oh, I'm like, okay, now I know how I might play those next time a little more effectively. But very cool. I like that they're the same deck. I know we talked a little bit about Churchill and how there's some randomness there in how you draw those cards, but also those cards or those decks are very, very different.
Yeah, I mean, yeah. So that was a conscious decision, so that you would feel that you had, you know, I love card games, and but one of the things that's sort of one of my design mantras is much easier to say than actually affect, but is that there should be no bad cards, right? So that a card might be poor in one respect, but perhaps it's good in another respect. It might have a low strength value, but maybe it doesn't have a cooldown on it, and you can play it every turn, say. And we saw a little bit of that here. But so that's something that is in my mind, but also, you know, when you draw. So this isn't all of these cards are accessible to you right at the beginning of the game, and I didn't want you to feel as if you were losing because you were unlucky. I mean, you can still be unlucky, right? But it's a different kind of luck, I suppose. But so I wanted you to feel as if you were in a situation that was mirrored by your opponent, and that you both had equal opportunities to win. It was just how and when you decided to place those.
The key to this game is I think there's very little luck. The only luck really is in these events.
Yeah,
Yes.
they just tweak things one way or another, and just kind of off balance things so that you can't be totally sure exactly how it's going to go. They also represent some of the narrative of this situation and give us a bit more historical flavor, which I think helps the game overall. It's sort of, you know, it's a short game, really. Particularly when you
Probably
get to-
30 minutes once you understand the rules
I think
and
so,
the strategies.
Yeah.
But the game is really about playing these cards well, playing them at the correct time, playing off your opponent well.
Yeah, second guessing what they might do, looking at what they've already played and figuring out, well, I think they're likely to do this to me. And you know what? You also get this kind of metagame dynamic, because if you guys were to play this again, you would bring some of what you just learned about each other in this game and reapply that in
I really like, because I feel like a lot of the games that we play will often have like dice rolling for combat, or like there's lots of luck in a lot of that stuff. And
There's
this
not
game
luck
had
in this
very, very little in it. And that was kind of a breath of fresh air compared to a lot of the stuff that we do. And it was just so tense, because so much of the game is maybe not in your control, but as a result of your decisions. And it was very cool to play that out. That was a really great hallmark of this, that's for sure.
Yeah, I had a blast with this one, for sure. I definitely want to explore it more, and
Yes, thank you very much for showing us this.
Thank you.
This is wonderful. I know it's probably coming maybe in 2024.
I think, probably, towards the end of that year, I guess.
And I'm assuming they'll do a crowdfunding, Kickstarter, GameFound, or something.
Yeah, I think
that's kind of Kevin's.
That's how he tends to do stuff. Yeah.
But yes, Peace 1905, definitely one to look for. But thank you very much, Maurice, for sitting down and showing us this and letting us play it. And thank you everyone for tuning in. I've been Alexander from players8.com.
And I'm Grant.